I'm Jake Blau with Service Express. I'm the CTO there. I also have with me here in the front row Chad Botbile, who's one of our data scientists. I brought him in case there was any technical questions, because if there's a technical question, I'll be totally honest, I probably can't answer it. So that's why I have Chad here. And kind of the point of this discussion is kind of talk about where you're at in your company and how to take steps forward. Over the last couple of years, we've done a big build out to our data science team. So we're going to kind of share that story of how we did it, what's gone right, what hasn't gone as right, and then also hopefully be able to answer questions on the way. So just so I kind of know my audience, who in here are analysts already, practicing data scientists? Managers, any management here? All right, you're the enemy, that's okay. And any business owners? Okay, now just one more stratification. Who do we have here in like the small to medium business space and large company space? All right, cool. We got a pretty good mix of people in here, I like it. All right, so first I'll just do, just to give you some context of, because no one's ever heard of Service Express, and that's totally fine, because no one anywhere has ever heard of us, but I'll do just a brief description of what we do, which hopefully will give you some context on why we did what we did. So Service Express is a data center maintenance provider. So it is the unsexiest part of IT is when servers break, we fix them. We're an insurance policy for data centers. I know some of my customers are in the room. We work with Amway, we work with Meyer. We're global. All of our brick and mortar offices in the United States, but we're based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been with the company about 18 years. We were about 6 million when I started. We're about 113 million now. So we've had a real rapid amount of growth over the last 20 years. Most of our revenue is from recurring maintenance contracts. So people pay a maintenance contract. If nothing breaks, we still get paid, just like your car insurance. You still have to pay it even if you don't wreck your car. Same kind of thing, but it's with computers. Now, what the company is really built on and what's a real key differentiator for us is that we measure everything. And we've always been this way. And we have a system we call SR5, where we have scorecards, which are departmental. We have ROIs, which are individual, stands for responsibilities, objectives, and indicators. I usually summarize it by saying it means return on investment. You're an employee, I pay you to do something. We measure that result of what you do for us, and then we count that as performance. And then we also have a system called 515s where we do our quarterly planning. We write down our quarter, what did we do, what did we not do, what are we going to do the next quarter. So we're very, 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 very metric driven. And because of that, we measure every single thing in the business we possibly can. And for a very long time, we didn't need data science to do that. However, as we started to scale and we started to get larger and problems started to get larger, we suddenly reached kind of an inflection point where SR5 by itself wasn't going to get us to the next level. And then just a plug for us, if anybody is out there looking, we're a pretty cool place to work for. We win all sorts of workplace awards. Most people are at our corporate facility in Grand Rapids. We have about 450 employees around the United States, but our data science team is all located in Grand Rapids. And we're always hiring. I think when I built these slides, I think it said 440 and we're at 460 now, and I think that was a month ago. So we're always onboarding. So before we start, like, what did Service Express look like before we decided to change and decided to go into this new era? And really we had a lot of what we call analytical amateurs. I was one of them. I knew enough about Excel to be pretty dangerous. I didn't know enough about math to be dangerous, but that's why I had people like Chad. And we did like really basic analysis, really basic averages. Pulling data was kind of a problem because there was some data you had easy access to and some you didn't have easy access to. We had our own built ERP system, which was awesome for some respects, but in other respects, it siloed the data in ways that it made it really hard to do certain analysis. A very dumb example was you could look at all service ticket data and you could look at parts data, but you couldn't look at the two together, even though those two were really, really tied together. And so somebody like Chad would have to come in and do all sorts of manual work in Excel to figure it out. And if we didn't have Chad as one of our analytical amateurs at the time, we had to go to IT and wait 6 to 12 months for them to build some custom report for us. We even dabbled in doing our own BI self-service platform. Some advice, don't ever do that. There's a lot of companies that build them that are not that expensive, that work way better than trying to do it yourself. Pay somebody else to build your BI self-service platform. So one of the first things we came across is we started to make this decision, and what happened at first is that Chad actually came into the company as a purchasing agent. And then we realized one day through our analytics that we had that Chad wasn't buying anything anymore because he was doing nothing but analytics for all sectors of the business. And we're like, well, I'm not going to pay you to buy things if you don't buy things anymore. So we created our business intelligence unit with Chad. And at the time, we put it in IT. And I think Chad would agree that wasn't great. No. So one of the first things we said is, okay, we're going to scale this up because we know that we need some more advanced analytics. We need some data science. Where should we live? And so we read a bunch of books and we looked at a bunch of other companies and we kind of came up with, you live in the line of business. So finance has their people and service has their people and inventory has their people. They could live in IT because they're close to the data and they sort of code, so that sort of makes sense. Or a center of excellence model where people are kind of all over the place and they get together to talk about projects. We decided to go with a centralized analytics practice. And so the analytics practice does not report to any individual function. The analytics practice basically reports just to me, and then we service all parts of the business all at the same time. There's some big benefits to that. The biggest benefit being is that there's an analytical issue that your boss is in finance and he asks you to do some reports and you find some problems. And you find problems with financials. You now have to tell the CFO that his financials are wrong. And so there's a conflict of interest, which for an analyst, that's super uncomfortable to say, yeah, I've looked inside your business that I work in and things are not going well. Us being a centralized practice, we can tell everyone they're doing a horrible job with no repercussions whatsoever. So first thing that we kind of went through that I'd advise for anyone, especially if you're in a small to medium business, is to look at what you have today and are you ready to take that step? There's a lot of companies that are like, I bought this cool software and I got this top-notch data scientist and we're totally going to go in and we're going to solve all the problems in the company. And then the data scientist comes in and says, your data is goo. There's no governance, there's no rules, there's nothing for him to do in that data. We were very lucky that we standardized our data when we were very small. When we were only about 6 million in revenue, we started standardizing all of our data and structuring our data. So when we scaled and we got bigger, we were ready to do the analysis when it came in. If we were to have to standardize our data today, it would take us years to actually do it. We also made sure that all of our business processes worked, and then we made sure that our hardware infrastructure could handle it. Luckily, because we're a data center company, we have a whole warehouse full of servers. So when IT said, well, you want to run all this stuff, and I don't know how we're going to do it, I just rolled a whole bunch of racks of servers in and said, power them up and serve me what I need. And the other really big thing that I'll mention here is executive sponsorship. So as you're talking to people at the C-suite and the C-level, you have to sell them on the idea of what this is going to do for the business, and you have to sell them on what it's going to cost and what it's going to take. Because if the executive sponsor doesn't believe in this stuff, they're not going to believe in you building it. So has anybody struggled with that in the past? Like, you want to do these things? Care to share, or?
There's just a lot of times where we'll build out something, and currently I'm inside the IT department, and we'll build out some form of analytics or a dashboard that kind of reports on projects that and like how the status is going, and we would green light it, and then the executives would shoot it down, because a lot of times they're like, well, that's actually not showing what we want it to show. Like sometimes there's a lot of yellow to red areas of our projects. So let's not highlight that on every TV. So that got shot down quick.
Yeah, so what I kind of referred to of like, hey, here's the analytics you wanted, and they're like, that doesn't make me look good. You can't show that. We sometimes get this with the sales team of what we call the fake news dilemma. Is you deliver this product to them, and you're like, yep, this is exactly what's happening in your business, and they look at it for a second and go, nope, fake news. That's not right. I'm like, well, how do you know that? They're running on gut instinct of like, no, it can't possibly be that bad. Like, well, it's based on your data. So unless your data is bad, then yes, your business is bad, so we should probably fix it. We were very fortunate that we have a few people on the executive team that really bought into it. But then that kind of goes to like, how did we go about getting some of that sponsorship? And that kind of started with our second employee, which is a gentleman named Jim, who's down doing the internship panel. The first thing we did is we started small. We didn't come in and say, okay, we're going to start this practice, and then we're going to take the hardest problem we can possibly find and spend 2 years trying to crack it. We took one little problem that we knew that we had, and we thought we're just going to go all in, and we're going to try to fix that one problem. And by showing the executives of what the problem is and how to fix it and how to prescribe for it, they're going to tell us to go do more of it. And in this example, we looked at churn. So churn is a customer gets rid of a server and it goes off of contract, and then they buy a brand new one. We don't take that under maintenance for 2 to 3 years as it's under warranty with the manufacturer. So you lose revenue and you gain revenue. And over the years, we watched it fluctuate, and then the last couple of years it started going up. So as a recurring revenue model, the more deletes you have, the more you have to outsell them, and it was starting to get really hard to outsell the churn. And the executives all had like all these gut instinct, like, well, it's because of the cloud, and it's because of virtualization, and it's because of IBM, and it's all these different things. And we kind of thought like, that can't all possibly be true. And so we sat down and said, okay, we're going to figure out churn, and we're going to make churn predictable, and then we're going to present that, which worked. We found exactly what in the business was actually causing churn, which had nothing to do with cloud, by the way. It had 100% had to do with partners, that we had partners we were doing business with, and they were awful. And that was actually what was driving it. So as we did that high impact project first, they pretty much said, okay, well, I want you to do that for every single part of our business. And I said, I got 2 guys. And they said, well, get more. And I said, okay, how many more? And they said, however many you need. And I said, 4 plus some interns? And they went, yeah, do it. Because I was showing them that value of what they could do. Not necessarily just showing them that this isn't good, but showing them exactly how to fix it. So what I really had to do is trying to lead this group, and I have no background in data science. I do not have an education in data science. I've just been in the business for a long time, so it ended up in my lap. I've really had to cast a vision. And when I talk about casting vision, you're kind of talking about, yeah, I know this is what we're doing right now. I know we're doing scorecards right now, and that's not really that fun. But this is what we're going to be doing next year. This is what we're going to be doing in 3 years. This is our end goal in 10 years of what this is going to look like. And that really excites the executives, and it really excites the analysts, because they know, like, yeah, this thing I'm working on kind of sucks, but it's going to be great a year from now. And then I have to keep doing it. Because every time we churn out a new product, what do they want? Well, what's next? When's it going to be delivered? So we're working on revenues now, predictable revenues. And they're like, yeah, can you have that done by Thursday? Like, it took me 6 months to do churn. I'm not going to do revenue by next Thursday, but we'll start on it, unless they give me 8 more people. But every time that we're going out and we're talking about it, is we're casting that vision of here's what our practice is going to look like when it's done. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's what the company is going to look like when it's done. And this is what it's going to return to us in a dollar amount. So we'll switch to talent. I believe that's Overwatch for the nerds in the room, including myself. So a big thing I want to say first is how we built this. Some of it actually by accident, but some on purpose. We hire for talent first and skills second. So skills are great. I can code in X, I can do this model, I can do this churn model, I can do this kind of thing, I can work in Tableau, whatever. We actually skip the entire part of that resume because I don't care. I don't care what you can do. I care what you're built to do. So there's talents and skills. Skills are things that you can do that can be taught. Talents are things that you are inherently made for. Me personally, my talent is troubleshooting. I was a car mechanic for 20 years before I joined Service Express. I fixed cars. I'm actually pretty good at it, which is how I got the job to fix servers. Because of that, they give me things that are broken, and I fix them, and that's very natural for me. For other people, that's not natural. So we look for two things. We look for people that are super curious, and we look for people that love to learn. So Chad taught himself SQL, picked up a book and taught himself SQL. Taught himself R, is teaching himself Python right now, or taught yourself. You might already be done. He's never done. So that never done. He never done learning. So we look for people that just always have to learn. They always have to learn something new, and they're bored if they're not learning. Because if you're really hungry for knowledge and you're really curious, you're going to pick up whatever tool comes out in the market, and you're going to learn it, and you're going to master it, and then move on to the next one. So we brought in interns from college, didn't know how to code SQL, but they knew how to basically code. They learned SQL within 3 weeks, and they were doing modeling by the end of summer. And so we're not looking for that unicorn that knows how to do everything. We're looking for people that just love to learn. So part of that is now you have to build a culture. You have this person that really loves to learn. Now you have to build a culture around their job that they get to learn all the time, which is sometimes super annoying. Because as soon as they learn something, they're like, yeah, I know we did that over here, but we're going to do this in a completely new language. And I always have to ask, like, well, how long is it going to take to spin that up? We're going to do this in a whole new language. Like, 3 days. That's a lie. It's usually 6. But you have to build that culture of allowing the analyst to go out and learn and to go out and do things the way that they want to do them. And then we look for a diverse educational background. So on our team, I don't think anyone on our team has a data science degree. I think one was a data science minor. But one had a background in finance, which was super helpful because he could read all the financial reporting. One had a background in chemical engineering, but then went into actuarial. One was straight out of school, mathematics. And then I can't remember what Mitchell was, but he might have actually been the only data science guy. But we kind of look for a diverse background because that's great that you can code, do everything else, but what's that other thing you bring to the business that the rest of the team doesn't have? So you want a well-balanced team. If you get 8 guys that all know finance, you're gonna be awesome at finance, but service, you're not gonna understand. So we want people from all over the place. And then the big thing that we did last year after BDI is we immediately partnered with all the local universities. Calvin, Aquinas, and GVSU were the 3 big ones. We went and did presentations for their classes. We gave them data sets. We took a huge data set of like every service call and every contract we'd ever done. We anonymized the personal data and shipped it out to them and said, play with it, tell us what you find. So our data is actually being used in Calvin's coursework now for data science. It sounds kind of risky, but once you anonymize a few fields, kids aren't gonna know what that is. It's just a bunch of numbers and letters to them. But they're finding out cool things about our data. Well, now the instructors are sending their best students to us to be interns for the summer and winter semesters. So that's been a huge thing for us, because now we have an intern coming in that when they graduate from college, they're already gonna understand our data. They can start on day 1 and hit the ground running.
You got any insights from Calvin College?
We haven't done any official insights. Our interns this year actually did an unstructured text analysis, which once we launch that program, will probably save us $500,000 a year in expenses. So it's been really successful, and we've hired one from that program. And this is all within the last 14 to 15 months that we've done all of this. That we went from basically Chad to a team of, I think we're 7, including the interns now. So once you got them, now you got to keep them. So there was a presentation this morning from a gentleman at CMU that talked about retention was an issue. So how do we keep them? We keep them using variety. We allow them to work in any part of the business. We allow them to work in whatever data they want. We don't put any data off limits. And we allow them to do projects, hackathons, code in new languages, whatever makes you guys happy. It seems kind of counterintuitive to take that 40 hours a week that they're already super busy and then cut out 6 of it for them to daydream and do whatever crazy things on their mind, but it's extremely engaging. And so no one wants to leave because they have fun at work. If you talk to any of the other guys from Service Express, we're all here for all 3 days. They'll say like they don't really have a job anymore. They just come to work to have fun because it's a fun environment, but it's also a really fun way to do the job. We don't do month end. We don't do boring Excel reports. What we do is always high quality, high impact. And then we invest in continuing education. Chad blows through about 6 or 7 books a month. We buy them all. Well, I think Chad buys some on his own because he just does, but we buy them all the books they want, whatever the software is that they want. If they want to go to a SQL Saturday or if they want to come to this, we go, yep, we'll go ahead and pay. Go ahead and do it. We know we're going to get that investment back. And the analysts that are out there, like, you know, you guys want additional education. You want to see what other companies are doing, and that's been huge for us. And obviously, I'll say again, you got to keep casting the vision. The moment the analyst says, oh, I'm going to do office performance reporting for the next 6 years, they're looking to get out of there. We say we're going to automate office performance reporting, never look at it again, and now we're going to go over and build something brand new. We're doing probably 80% innovation and 20% maintenance. So I'll stop there for a second. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Am I out of my mind?
Do you kind of develop specialists amongst the analysts? Like I know at Wolverine, we kind of have that siloed version of things, and the reason the finance analyst is kind of good at the finance people is because they know finance. Do you tend to maybe throw the same type of people towards certain problems? So you're almost developing the specialist system at all?
That's a great question. So the question is like, have we developed specialization? I'll say on the one side, officially no. We generally kind of we throw the ball into the pit and see who runs towards it. And certain people want to work on certain problems or certain things. We've even found that they've come to us on things that they accidentally found while they were doing something else and went down the rabbit hole with it. And then they come back to like, hey, did you notice this? And you're like, how did you even see that? Like, well, I was working on this report for so-and-so, and then I found this, and I thought it was weird, so I followed it over here, that curiosity. So we haven't really done any specialization. I'll say that Chad's more on the data architecture side, and then I think Eric does a lot of the finance stuff, but there's no official, you deal with finance, you deal with operations. Sometimes it comes down to what is the program we're going to put the analytics into, because to go kind of the next one, our technology stack, we're using 6 or 7 probably different programs. What I'll advise for this group is don't start right off the bat with the most expensive thing you can possibly find. Unless you have it, great, but you don't have to start out with Cognos right off the bat. For an analytics practice in its infancy, Excel works just fine. Excel, SQL, your ERP, there's tons of data in that. And you don't need something fancy to get insights out of your data right off the bat. And if you want some of those high impact, low risk projects, you're probably going to find them and be able to do them in Excel or in another basic program. We try to get sold a new BI platform every couple of weeks that promises the best chart of the day, and they promise that it's going to do all these things for you and do all your predictive modeling for you. I don't believe any of that. I don't believe in any fancy software that says that's going to solve all my problems, because I really want to know how that black box works. Well, I don't. Jim does. I wouldn't understand it anyway. So we started out in Excel, Access, SQL, and our ERP. When we got a little bit more advanced, we started including Periscope. We use Salesforce Analytics Studio, also known as Wave, and then we use Informatica as our ETL. We are not a Tableau shop at this point in time, just because the pricing didn't work for a company our size. Now you get a little bit more advanced. You're like, okay, I've done all the basic. I've done some basic prediction. I've done some basic analysis. Now you start to get a little bit fancier. And as you talk about your people, now you say, okay, I got 3 people on my team and I'm reaching maturity and I need that 4th person. That 4th person, now you kind of want to bring somebody in that's used TensorFlow or used R, used Python, used one of the more advanced languages, or who has done some of the advanced mathematical modeling that you're going to need. If you already have that person, then you kind of figure out when you have to add to the team, what stack do they really need to be proficient in. But I'll say it again, don't get caught in the hype cycle of software, because everybody has a fancy software and 6 months from now they find out it's junk, and then you move to another one and it's painful every time you have to do it. We're using 3 or 4 basic programs and then 3 or 4 more advanced programs that are cube-based, and it seems to be plenty enough for what we want to do. So what's the result? Like, that's great that I just talked and you could think that I'm completely full of crap. So this is kind of a quote from our CEO, is he referred to it as a new business renaissance. Knowing every single lever in our business and knowing what it's doing has been immensely valuable. Not only has it been immensely valuable for our team, but we're also held by private equity, and private equity guys love this stuff. And if you want to get your company value to skyrocket, like know what your business does, and the equity guys absolutely love this. When I went to the equity group and said, yeah, I need a $500,000 investment in BI, they were like, do it. Don't care, we'll spend the money. Because the return they're getting out of it is immense. So important levers in the business, eliminating gut instinct. That most companies, especially in the small and medium space, are run by an entrepreneur who knew everything about the thing he built his business on. And he knew everything about it 15 years ago. But the world has changed and the business has changed, and the longer that you're away from the front line of that business, the more your gut instinct goes a little north-northwest. And then you get the fake news dilemma that I referred to earlier, because the owner says, well, that's not even possible that could happen. And it wasn't 15 years ago, but it is today. So our goal has been to just eliminate any gut instinct from the boardroom, that we are only operating on data and data assumptions. So what that means is we've become a trusted advisor to the C-suite. So when the CEO says, I've got to make this decision, he doesn't just say, well, I'm the boss, I'm going to make this decision. He goes, I'm going to go check with the data team and I'll be right back. And then he comes to us and says, here's a question I was asked. Could you give me what the answer is? And then he will refer to that answer when he makes a decision. And when we were 6 million, he would just go, yep, go ahead and open Houston. And now we look at it and say, well, do we want to open that office? What does the leads look like? What do the revenues look like? What does the territory look like? And then he waits for us to come up with the answer for him. Some of the things that we've done just recently, predictive profitability. We can predict the profitability of a contract before it starts. That was all done in R?
A little bit of R, a little bit of Python. I think then it all just pushes through some underlying kind of SQL tables that we can reference on the front end.
Which gave us predictive revenue, predictive pricing. We actually just rolled that out with the sales team on Monday. To tell them what is the best, most optimal price for them to sell a contract for. Those 3 things will result in $2 million in bottom line revenue by the end of next year. So we've paid for ourselves 4 times in one project in 1 year. And that's a pretty big deal for us. They don't complain about my expense sheet. And then the last one I'll mention is this is the magnum opus of the data science team, is the Grand Unified Theory. We're architecting a fully driven, data-driven, driver-driven business model that interacts with every single section of our business. So as revenues are predicted, it will predict headcount. It'll tell us when to hire people. It'll tell us when to move inventory. It'll tell us what costs are going to be. It'll tell us what OpEx will be, so that as we decide we're not going to open San Francisco, we're going to open Washington, D.C., it will tell us out to 2025 what effect that has on the business based on all the drivers that we've built out. It's a fairly big project. I'd say we're 25% of the way through it, but that in and of itself will probably be worth more than the company is today when it's finished. Some recommended reading. I know that they're going to send this out, so you don't have to memorize everything on the screen. These are some books that I recommend and my team recommended. If you're in that burgeoning data science team, or you want to grow your team, Competing on Analytics and Analytics at Work, those are both not extremely exciting books. I did see them at the Schuler stand, but they're great books. And then my other favorite is actually How to Measure Anything, which can't be anyone else's famous. It's also not a thrilling book. It's not a Kuntz novel. But it's a really good book on how to measure the impact of projects that you want to run. Questions?
How do you figure out how to monetize a predictive model that's not even out yet? How do you monetize that more advanced to get it past the C-level suite?
Yeah, so question, if you couldn't hear, hopefully you did, is how do you monetize a revenue stream? So in our current models, we're not doing any new additional revenue streams. So I can't say that we've done that yet, but in our existing revenue streams, we have been able to monetize the effect that our programs will have on them.
How?
So for example, this pricing model that just rolled out, a salesperson picks his price. We can now, we did measure of where our salespeople have been pricing it based on all these other models. And then we post what we call a suggested price, which is essentially like, this is what everyone else is winning it at. And so we looked at every single deal we ever sold, how much did we sell it for, and how much could we have sold it for? And then we looked at the difference, and then we did a factor of, we might have lost some of those deals had we had a higher price. That's where we came up with that $1 to $2 million in additional revenue.
When you first started this journey, did you find it hard to say, okay, we know we're not here at this data science level yet, but we want to get there, and this is the potential revenue or cost savings for the business. Did you have to do that ahead of time?
Yes. So we initially said if we could fix the churn problem, this was just when it was 2 people, we said if we could fix the churn problem, at a minimum we would know, which is worth a lot of money. But we said at a minimum, if we can reduce it, that would produce X amount per year. And then when we proved out that model worked, then after that, it was more of those like, they basically turned the tap on and said, we're all in, do as much as you possibly can.
Thank you.
Maybe to speak more to how you solve the churn problem?
Oh, man. Yes. And then Chad will correct me and say that everything I said is wrong. So we looked at churn, and so we looked at like 100 different ways. Like, is it the customer? Is it the customer size? Is it where they're located? Is it the tech? Is it the salesperson? And we really got all the way down to it was the type of equipment. So you have HP and IBM and Dell and all of these different manufacturers, and then within those you have different product lines, servers, storage, networking, et cetera, et cetera. And so we found that the first thing was that our systems revenue compared to our storage revenue had rebalanced. So our server revenue, it hadn't gone down, but as a share of total revenue, storage had crept up, and that storage had a shorter tenure than systems. Then we found an outlier inside of there that was actually responsible for like 0.4% of our 2.3% of churn, which was one particular product line that was only lasting 12 months, not 27 months, and that our sales of that product had gone way up and churn followed it. And then we found a partnership issue on top of that that led to that. But I think in our scientific process, like, again, I personally don't know the data science. I couldn't do the equations, but I would say I have a hunch about this, and then Chad and Jim would do a bunch of work, and they'd come back and go, "You're wrong. That has nothing to do with it." And I go, "Oh, okay." And then they would say, "But we found this. What is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's a really big disk array. Why?" And like, because we found that it has a problem. And then they just kept coming back. So there was a refinement over 3 or 4 months before we reached a fully workable model.
So that essentially ended up with like 2 dashboards that we just kind of monitor now. So we monitor out of those server, storage, and networking, kind of what's the ratio of all of those, because we can kind of know where that's ideal. And then we have a dashboard for our sales team that essentially says, you have customer ABC, they have storage and system and storage equipment. We know they have to have networking equipment like at the building, right? That makes up a data center. Like, go sell that piece. Like, so it spawned that, which wasn't even part of the churn problem, right? But it, now there's all this like potential business out there that we were able to find.
It was a happy side effect of the problem.
2 out of 3 pieces go try.
Exactly right.
Yep.
There's networking there, right? You're just not servicing.
Yeah. And sometimes we'd find that we only had one of the 3 and say, well, there's 2 more legs out there, go get those. And then we found that would actually help the churn problem as well. But the whole thing really was throw a dart at the board. Did it tell us anything? No. Let's throw another dart. Let's throw another dart. Hey, we're close with that one. Let's go down the rabbit hole with that. And it was very rapid. So we were just, we're all seated right next to each other. We just walk out of the office and just chat for 10 minutes, and then they do a bunch of work and then spit it back the next day. Sir.
So you said that you just built up this analytics team over the last 15 months.
Mm-hmm.
So hiring, how did you find the right people in such a short time period?
So I'll say two things. One is we didn't look for skills. We looked for talent. That opens up the pool quite a bit. Some of it happened happenstance of networking. Jim and Eric, one of the other guys, went to the same gym. And they were talking, and Jim's like, oh, I went to this awesome company, and it's really great. We're doing this and this. And he's like, oh, really? That sounds kind of like fun. I'm not really looking right now. And then a month later, he was like, if I was looking, would you be looking? And so we brought him in, and then we posted an ad, and then we brought in the next one just from ads. But the way we drew up our ad was, do you love to solve puzzles? Do you love to look at data? And do you have these couple of skills? Like we did say, hey, bottom line, you should probably know SQL or know something SQL-ish. But beyond that, we didn't really restrict it. And then our last one came from an internship. So we had an intern. And we had a summer internship, and this is how we do things now, is we have a summer internship, and if you're super good and you're gonna be local, then hey, how about through the school year, how about you just keep coming in 4 hours a week? So we kind of kept, this was Anna, who was one of his students at Aquinas. We just had her keep coming in 2 days a week for 3 or 4 hours, except for finals and basketball, and kept her engaged and kept teaching her. And then the day she graduated, she's like, yep, I'll be there on Monday. So that's why we've started to ramp that up. We have an intern from Calvin right now that we'll probably do the same thing with after she graduates. Yes, sir.
So when you're trying to solve a problem and you're looking at new data or old data in a new way and you realize 20% of the data is garbage, or you're missing some very important data that you thought would have been there but it's not, how do you kind of manage that dependency? How do you work through that? Who do you connect with? Because you don't have analysts in the business, right, that can kind of run with that. You just reach out to the manager. Do you sometimes reach out to traditional IT? What does that look like?
We have a pretty close relationship with our IT department, mostly for that reason, right? And that's why we're kind of in this weird phase right now where we're talking through who owns, they're releasing these new projects, right? And we're partnering with them in the beginning of that project, going, hey, 2 years from now we're going to need these pieces of data, right? It may not seem important to you right now, but you got to start tracking these things. Add this extra field to this table, right? Just to have it. So it's been finding it, and then working with IT and working with some of the business owners to say hey, is there any way we can kind of backfill this information in if we do need it, stuff like that.
So I would say that on the garbage section, immediately our marketing and Salesforce database comes to mind because salespeople suck at data integrity. They just do. And what we did with that group is we're a trusted advisor on the data side, and we say, hey, you're looking for this kind of prediction. We need these kind of things to make that prediction work. So we're going to help you on the governance side to get your process and your data narrowed down to where it's usable. So right now we're doing pipeline prediction, and we find that salespeople may just a skosh manipulate their pipeline. And by a skosh, I mean a lot. So we're kind of so we're talking to the Salesforce team. I'm like, hey, so why are they allowed to do this and this? And they're like, well, they're salespeople. They do whatever they want. Yeah, not anymore. So we're kind of coming alongside of them and saying, okay, there really shouldn't be a reason for them to be doing this behavior, and then we will limit it in their business process so that at least going forward we're capturing it. Looking at the garbage in the past, we throw out the outliers, or we'll pick top performers and we'll look at their data and then kind of assume everyone else looks somewhat like that.
We've started doing a wall of shame in certain areas which we haven't decided if it's a good idea yet, but it actually works really well. People probably very demotivating, or I don't know. Have you done anything like that where you actually put the data up and by person, here's how many times this guy screwed up his
I have.
It's our sales team. It actually works really well with our sales team.
Yeah, I haven't gone with the cone of shame yet. Maybe that's something we can institute in the future. Generally, we'll look into the data and then we'll have a conversation with their leader and say, hey, I think Nicole could really use some help with her pipeline because we saw some things, and then let them kind of burst that conversation. Like, there's no one doing anything nefarious. No one shows up to work and says, I'm here to do a bad job today. They're all showing up to do a good job. At least at Service Express they are. I can't speak to your companies. They want to do the right thing, but the system will allow them to do the wrong thing. So we just try to get the system to not allow them to do the wrong thing, or to make the wrong thing super painful, and then they'll do the right thing.
How do you sell, business owners and executives on that? So you install a new field and it can't be back populated. And so it's gonna take a while to collect that data. So what I experience is, once you give them something that's really awesome, they want the next thing that's really awesome, and then you start digging into it and you go, we don't have that data yet. Well, when can you get it?
Oh, we haven't run into that too much, but I'm sure that we will. In the past, I'd say that when we have seen something like that, we kind of do hey, you're trying to track something that's never been tracked before, so tell you what, we'll start tracking it, and in 6 months, we'll do something else. We've even found most of the time, 6 months later, we found another way around the problem. We found a way to give them an answer without that field.
I will say on that one, so we've gotten kind of lucky, so we've provided, I think, enough value where they're, part of it, they just trust us to go, okay, yeah, I think you probably will need that, and probably it's pretty low impact, right, to add a column or something like that. A good example is like address validation. We always had this, kind of the mindset always was, well, when service has to go take a call, right, if for some reason the address wasn't entered correctly, they'll just fix it then, right, it's fine, it's not a huge deal, it doesn't, it's a couple of seconds for them, and it doesn't really impact a ton of stuff. We started doing all these, kind of looking at these new offices and looking, well, if I go to Houston, what revenue do I already have in Houston, right? Obviously, you can't do that if you have bad items, that's what the station is. So it was all this cleanup work that had really no impact on the front end, right? There's a lot of work that, and it gave value at the end of it, but there's no, you couldn't show anything while you're doing it.
Yeah, I had a project yesterday that, I was trying to connect, we have on-call, procedures, and they, need to, the APPs fill out, their on-call forms. So they're putting down, patient MRNs to connect them, so I'm like, I have a date and an MRN, on the internal protected system, so it's fine. But I'm like, I'd have to go manually find and guess at which case it actually was that they got called in for. So I'm looking at the form, I'm going, well, if they're dropping in the MRN, why don't they just drop in the order number right next to it, and then we just grab it right off the form, and now I've got it in a table that allows me to connect it to this other database I've got over here, and now I can audit their expense sheets. I can tell you if they're even on the case.
And that's why they don't want you to do it, because now you can audit their expense sheets.
But then when the customer asks, hey, what are the procedures that they're getting called in for? I can do it in 5 minutes instead of.
Yeah, it's a never-ending battle. I'm going to get out of here because I don't want to be that guy that holds everybody over. If you want to talk more, I'll be out in the hallway. Thank you, everybody.